Welcome to my next video. In this one I'm going to address the false idea of a right to, quote, travel, unquote, that is to operate a motor vehicle on the roads without a driver's or operator's license. Because I am retired and no longer have my law license, I will not be providing legal advice. I will only tell you what the law and case law say, and leave it to you for your own analysis.
Despite actions of police and local courts, higher courts have ruled that American citizens have a right to travel without state permits. Now,
your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
If you ever see this video, or any of the other videos espousing these same ideas, please ignore everything they are saying because it is patently false. So if you are ready, won't you join me as we travel to the constitute zone?
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into
the sovereign citizen zone. So, do you have the constitutionally guaranteed right to travel? This is more complicated than just a yes or no answer. To answer this question requires us to go into the law and case law. We most definitely will go much deeper than most sovereign citizens want to, or are even educated enough to go. Let's begin our journey by looking at the Constitution itself. Allow me, if you will, to slip into my professor mode. You won't find anything that directly addresses your right to travel. I encourage you to look for yourself. According to the Congressional Research Service, which is an arm of the Library of Congress, that prepares nonpartisan research for all members of Congress, the doctrine of the, quote, right to travel, end quote, actually encompasses three separate rights, of which two have been notable for the uncertainty of their textual support. The first is the right of a citizen to move freely between states, a right venerable for its longevity, but still lacking a clear doctrinal basis. The second, expressly addressed by the first sentence of Article 4, provides a citizen of one state, who is temporarily visiting another state, the quote, privileges and immunities, end quote, of a citizen of the latter state. The third is the right of a new arrival to a state, who establishes citizenship in that state, to enjoy the same rights and benefits as other state citizens. So there it is. Every citizen has a right to move freely throughout the country and to reside anywhere you'd like. You can travel about freely, and at will. In other words, you are free to roam about the country. Get it? Gnome? That was a joke. I guess it doesn't carry over well in the robot voice. I think most citizens realize this very basic concept of being an American. The place where sovereign citizens get it wrong is that they believe they have the right to travel in their personal cars as the driver of those cars. Further, they incorrectly feel that they don't need a driver's license or to have their vehicle registered while doing so. The case, most frequently cited as their justification for having this right to travel, is the case of Thompson v. Smith, decided by the Supreme Court of Virginia, on September 12, 1930. Sovereign citizens like to cherry-pick out one small paragraph from the holding, all while completely ignoring the entirety of the decision. The majority of the decision doesn't pertain at all to driving, or even individuals' rights. It discusses administrative functions, legislative responsibilities, and the overall legality of the city of Lynchburg's ordinance. The case concerned a citizen, Mr. W. L. Thompson, and D.C. Smith, the chief of police in the city of Lynchburg, Virginia. Under the general ordinances of the city of Lynchburg, a person who intended to drive a vehicle on Lynchburg's roads required a permit. That person had to apply for that permit to the chief of police. The law gave the chief of police a right to refuse to issue the permit. The chief of police tried to stop Thompson from driving his private car on the city streets. The ordinance gave the chief of police a right to refuse to issue the permit. Mr. Thompson had been convicted twice of speeding in the city. The chief of police revoked Thompson's permit, but he could not prove that he had sent notice of the revocation to Thompson. or that Thompson had received it. Over the course of many pages, the court said, quote, "The ordinance allowing the chief of police to arbitrarily revoke the permit of any driver who, in the chief's opinion, becomes unfit to drive an automobile on the streets of the city is void. The reason for this, the court explained, was because it authorized the chief of police to revoke a permit whenever, in the chief's opinion, the person's permit should be revoked. It was applied arbitrarily and at the chief's sole discretion. It allowed the chief of police to do this without any uniform rule, applicable to all persons alike, as to what constitutes unfitness to drive an automobile on the streets of the city." Okay. Have you kept up so far? Good. That brings us to the line in the decision that sovereign citizens like to latch onto. I'm not going to quote it in its entirety, but it starts off with, quote, "The right of a citizen to travel upon the public highways and to transport his property thereon in the ordinary course of life and business is a common right," etc., etc. What sovereign citizens don't do is read the next paragraph in the decision. This next paragraph reads as follows, quote, "The exercise of such a common right, the city may, under its police power, regulate, in the interest of the public safety and welfare. The regulation of the exercise of the right to drive a private automobile on the streets of the city may be accomplished in part by the city granting, refusing, and revoking, under rules of general application, permits to drive an automobile on its streets." So, in this very case that sovereign citizens so frequently enjoy quoting from, it clearly says that states can regulate the ability to drive by granting driver's licenses, so long as the granting or revoking of those licenses are applied equally to everyone. So there you have it. You have a right to move about freely, and to drive wherever you like. But those rights can be controlled by the authorities, by the issuance of licenses, so long as the laws are equitable, and are uniformly applied to everyone. Thank you for watching part 1 of my 2-part video. Please watch part 2, to get a complete understanding of what is the truth about your rights to travel, and whether that includes the right to drive a motor vehicle. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you don't miss any new content.